Hey guys, this is Tolly and welcome to Let's Build a JRPG Part 22. I'm going to be doing some coding this morning. We'll see how this goes. Bit of technical difficulties getting everything set up because if you were here for the last stream, you might remember I was saying at the end of it that I am getting a new PC. I guess it's a we in the community sense. We had been using the same PC since I started this YouTube channel well, YouTube was first, so since I started my YouTube channel 10 years ago, but I've upgraded. We now have a nice brand new PC. Hopefully it should be able to handle streaming and Unity a little cleaner. We're going to give it a try and see how things go. Hopefully there's no difficulties. We did have a bit of technical issues starting up, so if you were following on Discord, I'm sorry if I said I was streaming now and it took a little bit longer, but all of that's out of the way. Let's get down to coding. What are we up to today? Well, we're going to be changing this menu. That's my primary goal. I'm not super happy with the way that this is working right now. I haven't been for a while. And a preface or something we need to do first before we could really tackle this was we needed to get the units under control. So in the last stream, you may remember that we refactored everything so that the turn order no longer looks at a unit, because we have inside of our characters a guard, and that guard is a unit, and it was that we were referencing that unit object, specifically this script, for turn order. That was causing problems, specifically with our companion mechanics. So we have the concept of companions. So when we're choosing options right now, we're choosing to attack with either our rogue character or with the golem. And when we choose which of those we attack with, we do some stuff behind the scenes. And the way that that was working was we were adding all of the abilities to the hero. So we would say, hey, I'm a hero. I'm the one who matters. Add me to the turn order. I'm the one who's taking turns. But my companion's my companion's abilities get added to my ability set. And then when we take a turn as these guys combined, and we choose which one we're going to attack with. So we're either going to attack with our companion, which is the golem, or we're going to attack with our hero. But by having the hero be the primary character, it meant that if the hero died, then we had to do a bunch of funkiness. And so what we did last time was we made it so instead, when we handle turn order and basically everything else, instead we have a unit group. And that unit group contains a list of units, and that list of units is our hero and our companions. But we no longer care so much about the individual, like who's who. It's just we have units in a group, and those units can offer up their abilities. So if we take a look at the ability system, or real quick, in here we can see for the main action menu, which is what I was just showing be displayed. Now, instead of what we used to do, which was just get the hero's abilities and show the hero's abilities, and prior to showing them, when we start up the battle, we would add all the companions' abilities to the hero's abilities, which was a nightmare. Now, instead, we just go, hey, for the current active unit group, get abilities. And this thing will handle if that unit is not knocked out. So if it's not dead, then add its list of abilities to my list, and then we will show all of those abilities as buttons, essentially, that the user can choose to select. So now a user can choose which of these they want to actually have be their actions. So that's all cool, well, and good. I do think so myself. Now that we have all of that backend refactored, we can look at the menu itself. And this, I think, is going to be a bit tricky. I'm not super looking forward to this because we got to do a little bit of UX. And UX is iterative. We're not going to nail it the first time. Probably not even going to nail it the second time. It's probably going to take a couple of attempts to get this thing acting and functioning the way we want it. And that's really what the last month or two for me has been, is like, I could go forward with the prototype, but I really want to nail down playability. So I want to get this menu feeling a little bit more clean, because we got the ability system feeling more clean. Now when we choose to make an attack, this is going to give me plus like purple energy. And if I attack with that, we have this little animation that shows the effects going down here, and these things tick up. And then this thing's going to take fire energy. And if I attack with it, we pull the energy out and then we hit. and like all of that could be a lot smoother in terms of animations, but in terms of clarity of what's actually happening, I think this is a lot better than what was happening before, which is you use the ability and a number would tick up. We didn't even have the sections. It would just be a value in the corner that didn't have any motion or anything playing with it, so you just miss it. So instead, now we're actually seeing a lot of this, and it becomes a lot clearer that, oh, when I do this, it's generating something down on the bottom, and then when this guy attacks, he's generating fire, and then when I attack, I'm consuming some of those elements. Like there's a little bit more motion, and I'm liking it. Again, could be refined, but it's at least clearer what's happening. And so in the same regard, I want to make sure that we're clear with the actions. So what is it that we need to resolve? What is the lack of clarity that I'm having right now? Well, for a single character, it's fine. I'm choosing to take actions. I can defend with this guy. This guy will defend. But for this character, who's attacking? Now, we've actually removed a bit of code. In the previous edition, before we did the refactor with unit groups, we used to tint one set gray and the other set like dark gray to kind of indicate which abilities belong to who. I've removed all that code because honestly it doesn't work anymore, because now the way that we would tint it would be at the moment we would add it all to the hero, and we don't do that anymore. So now we need to find a way to distinguish these as companion abilities and these as hero abilities. And we need to do that, and we also need to be clear about that in that, like, when we perform an action, it should be clear that the golem is switching to the front, and the golem is now the one who did that attack. And he's the one taking damage now. So when the enemy attacked, he hit the frontmost unit, the golem got hit. All of that should be a little bit more clear. So I think step one for me is possibly visually changing the turn order. We can add some sort of indicator around the character as well. So when we hover over these things, if one belongs to a specific unit, maybe we add some sort of selector. But I think even just like if I go from the rogue to the golem's abilities, they should swap. They should, in real time, not when they perform the action, but as I'm switching back and forth on the UI, they should switch places. I think that's the first thing I want to try. I actually thought I was going to start with the menu, but now that I talk it through, I think just as I select these abilities, I want these units to swap places. Because I think that'll really highlight who's attacking, because who's in front is the person who's making that action. I think this needs to be more clear, so at a glance I don't have to go up and down to see them, but I should be able to tell somehow whose is whose. So we got two things. We need to refactor the menu to show the who's who of the ability, and we need to make it so that when we hover over an ability, it swaps the characters at that moment, if that character isn't in front. You know what? Yeah, let's start with the menu. That's where I want it to start. Let's start there. So we need to find a way to break up these list items into their own groups. Now, we do have the ability to choose a submenu. So my first thought is that we could do something where when we perform, or when we build all of these abilities, perhaps we have one level before this where you're choosing whether or not you're choosing actions for the golem or actions for the thief. So, oh, you know what I just realized I didn't do? Not a huge deal. I'm going to do it on the other monitor off screen. But when I set up this new PC, did not install Krita, which I think is going to be useful for me walking through stuff. So I'm going to get that installing. So yeah, we can basically have a menu like this before you actually get to these, and it's choosing whether you're attacking with the golem or the thief, but I'm not a huge fan of that design style. all heroes and characters will have attacks, I believe, a just basic attack. Can't see any reason why they wouldn't. We could take a page out of Octopath's book. Octopath, let's get an example. Images. Show me a image with the menu up. These are all really cool images, but I want to see someone selecting actions. Here we go. This is a good one. Open image in new tab. Let's bring this across. Okay, so here, when we look at Octopath, the way that they show their menu, they have this little Did that break everything? Interesting. It looks like that went to a black screen for you guys. Interesting. Okay. That was installing Krita. Alright. So... Install. Krita took over for a second. But the thing I wanted to look at was this little axe icon. When they have it so that you can perform an action in Octopath, you can choose between which weapon type you want to use. In fact, here's an even better image of it. Let's open this image in a new tab. Let's bring this over here. So they have these little arrows, and you can hit left and right to choose whether or not you want to attack with a sword, or like a spear, or a bow, or whatever other type of weapon that character might have equipped. We could do something similar, where when we perform the attack, we show maybe the character's face here, and we choose whether or not we're performing an attack with the golem or with the hero, and you can hit left or right to switch between them. It's a lot of extra functionality to this menu that otherwise is relatively simple. Krita, did you install? It looks like it did. I'm gonna have lost all my settings. I didn't think to transfer all of my brushes and stuff over. Oh, hello, Krita. Alright, so let's use the screenshotting tool. If I hit P, it'll take a screenshot. And let's now open that screenshot. Okay, and then let's take a look at this. So pixel. Yeah, I like the pixel brush. So yeah, we could add a character portrait here with some arrows left and right, and you could switch between them to choose who you're going to attack with. That's option one. The other option is that we have a menu before this where you choose whether or not you're going to attack with the hero or the companion. And when you select one of these, you go to a sub-menu that just shows the abilities for that character. Hey Kazukish, welcome to the stream. We're thinking about ability menus and trying to think about a good way. We're kind of doing some design work this morning. There will be some code refactoring at some point, but first we got to figure out what we want to do. And so it's mostly me rambling to myself, but I'm open to ideas or thoughts or opinions or references, really anything at all. So problem space. If we have a sub-menu beforehand where you choose whether you're attacking with the golem or the thief, and then we show the abilities internally, we're hiding information. That's my problem with that, is that does seem a lot cleaner if we're choosing who we attack with, then we choose that character's actions. But now we have to go potentially into the hero, then into the hero's skills, then look through the skills, and then it's like, oh, I don't want to do this. I want to do the companion skills. Then I have to hit back, go into the companion, go into the companion skills. It just feels like there's a couple layers deep, and UX wise, UI design style, like you don't want to bury information. You always want to be concerned about having too many levels deep in the system. So if we instead went with the Octopath style of having it so that when I perform an attack, I can choose to hit left or right on that action, and that'll switch between whether I'm attacking with the companion or the hero, I can see the attack action for both of them, and I can see which one I'm currently choosing. This feels clean. And generally, another game has done it, and people like Octopath, it's probably an okay design style choice. So this is probably better than... Oh god, I erased everything. Oh, I didn't put things on different layers. Let's undo. So I don't like this then. We'll get rid of that. And, you know, for the sake of cleanliness, let's add a new layer for all this draw over we're doing. So let's say that we do the character's portrait at the end of the menu, and a left and a right. And you can hit left and right to switch between which of these two characters you're attacking. Seems relatively clean. I'm now thinking about the skills. So when we go in a level, when we go to here, and we choose, I'm just going to turn off that tooltip because it doesn't look great and it hasn't for a while. It's another thing I want to change. If we go into here, would I want to hit left and right here to switch between whether or not I'm doing the thief's attacks or the golem's attacks? Or should abilities just be subdivided? Like, this menu is kind of big. We could just choose, especially if we shifted this. This menu is kind of overlapping our characters. Could we actually do a action panel, sub-action panel? If we just shifted this over to like here. Oh, that probably works. So we could see them swapping back and forth, because it's the other thing we want to try. So we could subdivide this in 2 rows. So we could have Golem's abilities and Hero's abilities on the left. So when you go to skills, I have this like set as like magic, but I think it would just be like one menu, which is just skills. And I choose which skill I want to perform. It would show up here in this, in a list, and we could have a list for the hero and a list for the golem, and you can just left, right, it's a grid. You could go back and forth between any of the options. Okay, here's what I'm thinking. Here's the next thought I have. How many of these things are we going to show? Because if it's attack and skills, and we show all of the skills under one menu, is there any point in having this menu at all? Is there any point in having a sub-menu system? Why do we want sub-menus? Let's take another game, for example. Why are we building submenus? So if we open up this Octopath simply because it's the one I have open, why does Octopath have submenus for its actions? It's primarily because of job systems. When you go into warrior skills, you're seeing warrior skills. If you equip that character with another job like thief, then you're going to want him to go into a submenu for the thief-based abilities. But in our game, we're not going to have jobs per se. We're going to have a lot of abilities that you have access to, but I don't know if we want to subdivide them into groupings. Maybe we could just have one menu. Let's just play with this. What if we just have one menu, And instead of a vertical layout, what if we had a grid layout? I can't have two at the same time. I got to remove this one first. Grid layout. Let's make it 100 by 20. Let's make the... It's been a while since I've done a grid layout. There should be a way to subdivide these into columns. Fixed column count, 2. Okay, okay. Spacing. Let's add a little bit of spacing here, a little bit of spacing between these, and then let's offset this a little bit. 15 here, and let's go 15 here. And then maybe these could be even bigger. 200 is too big. 175 is probably okay. Probably could go to 40. Let's change starting to vertical. There we go. Okay. And then doesn't need to be pixel perfect. We're just playing with stuff. Okay. So we could do this instead. All right. The system... We'll have to revamp the way we do UI navigation because this is on the keyboard right now and it only goes up and down even though we've changed this. So we'll have to change the way that these buttons interact and interconnect with each other so you can go left and right. But we could do this instead. I mean, realistically, it doesn't even need to be that big. What if we even just did 100 and then just made the whole thing smaller? It's another avenue we could go. We could try this. I don't love the way the cursor overlaps in this way, but the cursor is quite big. We could reduce the cursor's size potentially, but that's a problem I didn't think about until we put it into implementation. This is the part of game dev that I've been trying to avoid showing people. Normally I kind of come up with like a lot of the ideas and then when we get into a stream I just act upon them and I just work on the code. But like this is a large part of what I do. A large part is just sitting, staring at something and going, this doesn't look good. And then looking at a couple different other games and being like, what does Final Fantasy do? What does Octopath do? What does like Chrono Trigger do? Like just looking at a lot of games that I like and then I want to kind of have the feel. I want to make this game feel like an old SNES game in some ways. And like, what is the choice? What is the decision that we make here? Because we have to make a decision. Like I have to go write a bunch of new code. That code will probably take me 2-4 hours to write, and not very long potentially. It could be even quicker than that. But like, how do I make a decision? How do I decide what do I want to do here? Which type of menu do I think will be best? And I said at the start of the stream, often this type of stuff does not take one attempt. Usually you got to do it a few times. Like we had one version of the menu and it's not working. I'm not liking it. I want to redo it again. And I'm going to redo it again here, but this probably won't be the last time we do it. But I do want to try and like really put some thought into it and not just like change it for the sake of changing it. So what are we suggesting? Let's visualize this in Krita. So can we duplicate this whole thing? How would I duplicate an entire thing? Let's save as, and let's call this 2. We'll just call this screenshot 2. And then let's reopen screenshot 2 here. And then let's save as this one as screenshot 3 so that they're saving to different files. Okay, So let's talk about some options. So option one, actually, even better. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a screenshot of this. So we'll hit P. I don't need this breakpoint here anymore. Oh, it's gone. The breakpoint's gone. Let's open that with Krita. Open a new document. Okay. So we have this version here. I think that this version here would have potentially a scroll bar on the left-hand side that would like indicate how far down you've scrolled, essentially. Uh-huh. Totally reasonable. Box tool. Here we go. Get smart. So we'd have some sort of scroll bar, which is indicating how far down we've scrolled down this list. And I think that we would have a large amount of these boxes for potentially every ability. And instead of doing this is taking too long. Okay, fine. You want to be like this game? Or Krita? I just want to remove this text. That's all I'm trying to do. So then, I think that these abilities would not be necessarily attack and skills. I think it would be attack, and then you'd have like Fire Strike, use Thunder, like each of the different abilities would just be on this main menu. So instead of having a sub menu that we enter, as we do here, where it gives us like, hey, here's your choices, I think we would instead just have all of the abilities listed on the main menu. Is one option. What are the problems with that option? I think mainly the con here is that we're not going to be able to subdivide. And if our game has a lot of abilities, they're just going to make this list longer and longer and longer. Whereas if we do have submenus, we can start to organize things a little bit so it doesn't feel as cluttered on some of these screens. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So we don't want to do this. We don't want to have it all on one list. So then what if instead we had just attack skills, attack skills. See if we can even there we go. Skills, and then probably have like a background and stuff behind that, and it wouldn't just be a cutout of their head, it would just be a better image. But regardless, if it looked like this, Let's assume that there are two different types. Deselect. We could have this. We could have the first menu be subdivided into 2 columns. And then I choose whether or not I'm performing an attack or a skill for either one by just swapping back and forth between them. We display the 2 lists as 2 separate lists. This is probably one of the most fundamentally easiest things we could try. One of the quickest problem solves, or one of the quickest prototypes, because we essentially already have get abilities right now comes in and it just grabs the abilities of all the units and adds them to one result. But we could send back a list of lists. So we could send back each unit's list of abilities separately, and then we could run through and display each of them in 2 different columns. So the code would allow for this fairly easily to have like 2 lists. And then when I click on this skills, this would need to go into a submenu for this character's sub-skills. Okay. I think this is a reasonable potential. The other option is this one, which is instead... Let's get a better screenshot. I'm going to turn the tooltip off. And in fact, I'm going to get a screenshot of this character's because his has a few extra abilities on it and looks a little better for me. All right, so let's take a screenshot of that. Let's save as this one as screenshot 2. Okay, and then let's grab screenshot 1, open in a new file. Okay, so then the other option we can do is that when we're on this screen, we can have new layer. Okay, we can have the little sub menu that lets you swap between the 2 different types of characters. If I can, okay. Not my day. All right, so there would be a portrait representing who's attacking. Like that. And then we would have the ability to go left or the ability to go right to choose which of the characters we're going to attack with. Seems reasonable. If we had a defend skill and everyone had the ability to defend, we could have the same thing for that. And to be honest, we could do the same thing for skills. So you select which one you're going to choose, and then when you hit enter on this one, it goes into the sub menu, but the sub menu is for whichever character you're trying to, whichever one you chose on the previous menu. So you could go left and go into a different one for the other character. Effectively, if that was just it, then this version and this version are fundamentally the same from a user standpoint, because I'm either hitting left or right to go into one of 2 different menus. So these would be identical in functionality. The difference is that I could have one on attack, another one on skill, another one on defend, and I could have them in interchanging different options. And if we have a memory system that remembers what out where you had your cursor placed or which portrait you had selected, you could remember between them. But so they're functionally very similar. They just look very different. And I think this one's cleaner. It's a lot simpler. It takes up less room. So why am I hemming and hawing? Well, my main problem is if I choose which character I want on this screen and then go in, then I have to go back and forth if I want to look between the different abilities. So I'm like, oh, I want to use Flame Slash maybe? Oh, maybe go back in. I want to see the Golem's abilities. Oh, I want to use Thunder. Like, let's attack and then get back to this character again, just so I can talk a little easier. But it's like, okay, I want to do Lightning Slash, or maybe I want to do Thunder. This one costs 10 SP. This one costs 5 SP. Like, I don't like the fact that I have to go back and forth between these two menus to see this information. So we could do a combination of the two. We could have this menu be subdivided into Lightning Slash and Thunder and have the two faces, and you can go back and forth between this one. But on the main menu, you can just swap back and forth between attack. I think that I like that because then we can actually go between... I can see all the different options for these characters. But this again, the problem with that is I am assuming that there is one option menu. But if legitimately this was magic skills, and that's Thunder, and this was physical skills, and this was Lightning Slash, for example, then regardless of whether or not we show both options for both characters in those menus, I would still have to go back and forth between them in order to compare between different types of skills. And this is true even if something like Octopath, I have to go in, if I want to look at warrior skills and look at what warrior skills I want to use, I could also go back and look at thief skills and look at which thief skills I want to use. And I still have to compare and contrast between those two different options. And it's not a huge flaw. Same thing with all the Final Fantasies. I've been playing Final Fantasy V recently. Final Fantasy V has something similar wherein you go into the different option menus for white magic versus black magic or red magic or whatever choices you're making in those menus. But you have to go back and forth between different ones, blue magic, etc., etc. So like, and that's never I don't think that's a huge complaint of like JRPG players is like, oh man, I want to be able to see all the information in one menu option. Now, it's probably not that big of a deal. I'm attributing skills and knowledge I have about UX design to a problem that doesn't need it, probably. I'm overcomplicating an issue. Okay. So do we just go with this then? Do we just make it so that you can toggle back and forth between which character you're selecting that action for, whether it's defending or attacking, using skills? Or perhaps even more simple, Just exploring all options briefly here. Well, I say brief. It's been 40 minutes of me talking about this problem. Just there. Fine game, or fine critter. Here we go. We'll do it from this section again. We could also just show the character's face. No, I don't like this. I was just thinking about, like, because basically whether or not I'm choosing here by going left and right, or I'm choosing between here, this is just cluttered. It's just more buttons. It's just easier if, get out of here, if we just have left and right selection. Yeah. I think I've convinced myself. I think we have the ability to swap left and right between the two different actions of the characters. Choosing which character we're going to perform that action with. And then we can do the same thing with skills. If they have two skills. And then if there's something like magic that only the golem has, the hero doesn't have magic but the golem does, then we just show the magic as just the golem's face, and you can't swap back and forth between them. They just have one option. I think even the reference we were looking at here, this one here doesn't have the plus minus on the axe, probably because he only has an axe equipped. Whereas this one here, there's the back and forth. Alright, let's do that. I don't know if it's the right choice, but it sounds better than the current functionality we have, which is a bit much. And hopefully it's a little bit cleaner. So how do we implement that? I think my first question is, what happens when we click on a skill button? It's been a while since I wrote that code, but how do we get into submenus? Ability button pressed. We call submenu action with the submenu to open, which has a menu name. And it takes in that menu name and then it gets all abilities from the current active group that match that menu name. Okay, that's not too bad. We can pass in one more piece of information, which is the unit, and so only show abilities for that unit from that menu. If it's a submenu. Okay. So then how do we refactor this a bit? I think instead of generating all abilities on that list like we currently do, which ends up having, if we go back over here, this is the closest to what we actually have. We have attack skills, attack magic. Instead of showing attack twice, if we find the ability to attack twice from the two different groups, we need to show one for one unit and one for the other unit. Yeah, that makes sense. And let's start with just attack. We'll figure out the skill menu stuff second. Let's see if we can just make it so the attack button has the ability to hit left and right to switch between which character we're going to attack with. So we get all the abilities. Then we add all of those abilities to menu ability, if that matches the current menu's name. And I assume if we take a quick look over here, let me see if I can get the design data up. Game data. So if we take a look at the abilities design data, yeah, all of these ones here are main menu. And magic and skills are main menu as well. Okay. All right, so then we've added them to the list of menu abilities, and then we loop through those menu abilities and create a bunch of buttons from them. So the change we need is we need to not add the same menu ability twice. These ability infos have an ability ID. And two ability infos can be different. We can have two abilities that have the same ability ID but with different units, which is how we perform attack with the companion versus the hero. Which there isn't really heroes and companions anymore the way we refactored the code. There's just units. So the same ability can be used by either unit based on which one is saved. So what we need to do is we need to track. I think this menu abilities needs to be a dictionary. Of ability IDs, which is an int, versus a list of ability infos. Is that the data structure I want? I think it is. This might be a bit finicky, but let's give this a try. So let's assume that a menu abilities actually, rather than this be a dictionary, it might be better if this is just a class. Let's add a new class at the top. This might be cleaner. Let's call this menu action menu options. Seems somewhat reasonable at least. And then this option can be a public variable, which is the ability ID. And then it can have a list of ability infos, which is the ability infos associated with that ID. And let's make a quick constructor for that as well. Okay. So this is an action menu option. So if the menu ID matches, then we want to make a new menu option. How do we work through this problem? So essentially we want to add things to this option, but we also want to check to see if something with that option has already been added. Action menu options. Let's go back to making this a list instead of a dictionary. So then if it matches, I think we first want to check whether or not the ability, main menu abilities, contains this value. And the way we're going to do that is, I think, can we do this via a lambda? No, this wants a specific object. So it's not contains that we want. Is it find? Basically, I want to check whether or not a menu option... Yeah, this is a predicated match. Okay, so... if we write a lambda like this, we should be able to fill in x dot ability ID equals ability info ID. Semicolon? Is this a return? Is that what I'm missing? It's been a while since I've written one of these. Try find? Okay, I think what we do... Okay, this works, this works. So what we do is we say, hey, I want to find in my menu abilities a menu option, which we can call action menu option. We want to find one of these. And we want to see if any of the menu options in the list have an ID equal to this ability's ID. And if we don't find one, if it does, or if it equals null, then we want to have menu options equal a new menu options ID, in which we pass in the ability ID of this info and a new list with one new object, which is this ability info. Actually, I think we just want to add a new list to it that's empty. Because then afterwards, once it's created, we can just do a ability infos add the ability info now. And what this does is if we found it, great, then we're going to add to it. If we didn't find it, we're going to create a new one. I'm going to just get rid of these brackets, and then we're going to then add to it. So either way, we're just adding. Okay, so that's clean. And so now we have a list of action menu options, which will have ability IDs and then ability infos attached to it. Okay, so now we have a list of these. Now we do a dumb. Okay. This is some old code we wrote, which was before I was getting used to using addressables. So we hard coded a list of abilities. So if we look at the action menu, it's turned off. That's why I'm not seeing it. If we look at the action menu here, it has a list of 4 command buttons that are some prefabs we have pre-generated in the scene. We should actually generate these at runtime. We should add these buttons as we need them. It's not a big deal right now. That's not what I'm here for. This is not the major problem. We leave it. Let's double check. Everything good on all the streaming fronts? Yeah. Okay. So we have a list of action menu options. We're going to loop through our pre-existing 4 items. It's fine. I'll live with it. And then instead of... If we do this, we're basically effectively doing the same thing we've always done, and I just want to see if that breaks. This should do exactly what we already had. It should just condense down to only show 1 attack. Shows nothing. Cool. We wrote some code wrong. That's what I wanted to test. Before we go too far, I want to test things in chunks. So why did it show nothing? Because we didn't add this to the actual list. After we do all this, we need to add this new menu option to the list. Actually, I think we want to do it inside of the new. This should carry the reference. So if it's new, we want to add it to our list of menu abilities. And then outside of all of that, we'll update here. Okay. This might work now. It did, but it didn't do what I anticipated. I didn't expect it to show attack twice. I expected it to only show attack once, and it would only be one of the characters who would be allowed to attack with this code. So something didn't work the way I expected. And the only thing we can really do about that is debug it at this point, because I thought I understood the code, but I clearly don't. So let's get a better understanding. We didn't execute any of the code. We haven't saved any of this code. That would be why it's not getting hit. Pretty clear, understandable reason. Okay, so we would expect no change with this guy. Let's attach to Unity. Good. Now let's choose one of these actions. It doesn't matter. And then we're mostly seeing what happens when this character goes. They are the yellow square as soon as they get a turn. Okay, so we are going through. We found that this options was null. We're adding it. This menu option has negative blah, blah, blah. And we are adding it. Okay. I expected it to find something. Ability info. Ability ID, add. This is lightning getting to take a turn for the first time. Get all abilities. There are 6 abilities. 2 of these should be the same ability ID because they should be attacking. Attack should be the same ID. Okay, add abilities to the watch list. Let's open all of them. Let's open this, this, Interesting. Okay, something seems wrong. We expected some of those numbers to match. Let's go take a look at the design data. If we come into here and we take a look at JRPG assets, JSON, and then we take a look at the ability design data JSON. Actually, just let me open it in Visual Studio, please. No? Oh no. Everything is very mad at me right now. File Explorer is very upset. Okay, I'm gonna guess that's because I'm debugging. Let's stop so that my computer can take a breath. Okay. Yeah, it was. As soon as I stopped debugging, it opened it. Okay, so we have attack. Do we have two different attacks in our design data? Why did we do this? They're identical in every way, right? Yep. The only thing I can think of is that I wanted different animations to play on them, but I can figure out animations at a different time. Let's just make it so they have the same attack. So it's possible my code is working exactly as I expected to, but the data was incorrect, which is why we were seeing results that were unexpected. So let's do tools, parse characters. Okay, and now if we take a look at the actual character JSONs, character design data, the thief has 10, 180, 76, and 27. And then the, I believe lightning is specifically the one that we have assigned as companion. These still do not match. I'm having 76, 27, 1008. Yeah, these numbers don't match. Do they match between each other? Yes. Okay, something didn't take with the import. Where did we save our design data? Nope. This one. This was the data. Download. TSV. Oh. We're not putting it in the right folder. Okay. Okay, let's just settings, advanced, download, ask where I want my files to go, please. File, download, TSV, awesome. Helps if you actually put it in the right spot. TSVs, character TSVs, replace, good. Let's go back into Unity. Let's hit tools, character parser, which will import this into our JSON data. 108. And 108 matches this 108. So everyone now has the same attack action. The action for attacking is identical for both a hero and a companion. So now if I have the yellow one go, there is only one attack action. And that one attack action will be for the hero, because they got to go first probably. they got to add their attack first. So now this is all working as I thought it should. Next step, let's make it so that you can hit left and right between while on the attack button to switch which ability you're using. So that means we're going to have to modify the ability button. Currently, this thing just sets the color and has no other options. Okay. This thing is going to need to take the list of ability infos, I think. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's going to need to hold the list of information. So right now we just use one ability info to set to get the design data, and then from that design data we set the name of the button. Yeah, all of this is fine. We can set all of this information based off the design data. When the button is pressed, we send the ability info, which the ability info is essentially saying which unit it is, to the queue. And this is used, is button enabled, checks whether or not that specific character has enough. Okay. Okay. Talking through my problems. We're streaming, we should talk aloud. So the issue now is that the only thing that really matters is pushing this button sends, specifically right now we're setting it just to the first ability info that we find, and that's who's attacking. The other thing this thing is used for on the setup of the button is for the is enabled. These two pieces of information, basically these guys, are no longer static. We assume when we create the menu that these things will always be true, that the button is always either enabled or disabled based off of an ability info, or when you press it, you send a very specific ability info. Instead, these pieces of information will now change as you toggle left and right. So this cannot be inside the button, or can be set here at least. It needs to this chunk, because technically we need remove all listeners as well. We need this chunk to be dynamic. So we need to go into ability button. An ability button is going to need to listen for input. We're going to have to dig into the new input system. I don't think I have an example. I'm trying to run my brain through all of the code we've written, and I don't think there's a spot where we do button presses the way I want to. So we're going to have to write some special code, or do some research and then write some special code. But primarily we're going to want to have I can't think of a better name right now, so we're just going to go with left and right. And when we hit left or right, we're going to need to have a list of the ability infos that we have access to, because this ability button now can activate multiple ability infos. And it's also going to need to know current, keep the name and convention, current ability info index, which should start as 0 because we should always assume that we're at least at 0. And if we go left, we're going to want to the logic is basically if ability info index is less than 0 after we do a minus minus, then we want to set it equal to the end of this array, and that will be its count minus 1. So if this thing is 5, then we want to set it to 4, because 4 will be the final index because we start counting at 0, blah, 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 blah. Same thing is true in the reverse. When we go right, we'll need to increment this index. And if this index is greater than the count value, minus 1, or we could just do equal. If it's greater than or equal to the count, then we need to do this is equal to 0. Okay, that's all left and right is doing. This is pretty standard left-right code. In fact, I can get rid of the brackets because this is only one line for this if statement. It's just going to condense this down a little bit. So if we go left, we increment left. If we go right, we increment right. And then when we do that, after we've finished incrementing, we're going to need to call like update button or something. I can't think of what I need to call this. Let's just say update ability info. And what will that do? Well, that's basically going to update those things I was talking about a moment ago. So in the menu action, which I've lost, we can back up to it though. In here, these things now need to happen inside of this function. And this ability info is going to need to be whatever the current index is. Which I suppose we can do this. Okay, and now this button is going to be that button. This function needs to change, is enabled needs to come into here. Okay, so here we had an is enabled function set somewhere. Down here, is it possible for this to go inside of ability button? Can it be the one that runs this function? What's it going to be missing? Doesn't look like anything. We are missing the design data though, but we can get the design data in the same way we did here. We can do this. And that design data is going to come from here. So we're just moving over the pieces of the puzzles we need in order to be able to actually set this information. The last and trickiest part is this thing, which is ability button pressed. So What does ability button press do? It needs access to the submenu. This function we can't move inside of the ability button. It has to stay here inside of main action menu. So, how do we want to handle this? Don't know if this is good or bad. Someone recently told me that I should be using more local variables. Just makes code look a little cleaner, apparently. Slightly distracted with this. Current document, replace all. There we go, that's faster. Obviously still need it there. Apparently need it still there as well. That's fine. I guess that means technically it just needs to be out here. This small distraction is becoming a much larger distraction. This is just bad code. All right, cool. Now a lot of this is bad because we have preset prefab objects instead of generating them. All right, sorry, distracted. Back on track. So we need to find a way to call this when a button is pressed, but that will not be a fixed call. This will change. This will change. So we need to do callbacks in Unity. It's been a while. Unity callback, which is basically the ability to I think they're called system actions. Which, let's see here. Unity form, how to use system actions. Some action. This is how to set delegates. I'm trying to solve a problem, and you people are making it overly complicated. Full screen. I mean, we could use delegates, but I think you can just use Unity actions. Yes. Yeah, so I think what I want is I want there to be an action in here which I want to be of type Unity action. No, this isn't what I want. Shoot. Thought it was. No, these are... Okay. I don't want an event manager. It's an easy thing to think that's what I'm looking for, Unity, but that is not, or Google, I should say, but that is not what I want. Okay. We can fix the formatting. Great. That's not really my problem right now, though. It's been a while since I've had to do this. So basically, I want to call a function. I want to add this listener to this button, and I want to call a function. But the function I want to call is not here. I actually want to call a function in a different class. And so I don't want to just have a reference to menu action. Maybe I do it this. I'm okay. I'll figure it out off camera at a later point. It's been a while since I've done something like this. So let's just pass a reference to menu action to the action menu. And let's just do it this way. It's easier, it's simpler. Ability button pressed. Passing in ability info, which is calculated by the current index. So the menu, I'm calling this good. See, I don't even think I need to necessarily do this. Public void button is pressed. When a button is pressed, call this. Can I add this as the listener? Does that work? It does. Okay. Now, if that's the case, can I go all the way back to the beginning then? And do this logic still here? Is this where I took it from? I think it was. Okay, cool. This I think works. So we only have to call this one time. We don't need to update this constantly. We don't have to be removing and adding the lister all the time. We can just say ability button dot pressed function, call that, and then this function will update and call menu action function with whatever ability info it currently has selected. Fine, fantastic, good enough. Moving on. So that should allow us to do that. We will need to still update the buttons enabled. Yeah, we'll still need to update that. This, I think, can be simplified down. I don't need this many variables. I think we can just do this instead, like so. And then if this is only one line, I think this can be here. I think this can still be a function in case we want to add more to it, but it's really just this. This now needs to be here twice. I guess I can get behind this being a separate piece then. If it's used in 2 spots, then I'll let it go. Okay, so that's this. So this will update the button based off of whichever ability you currently have selected when you go left and right. Now, tricky part, the left and right part. Now this part will require a fair bit more research. So we're using the new input system that Unity has added, which should be event system. And we have move, submit, cancel as like our primary things that you're allowed to do. Move, if we look at UI, navigation, edit asset, navigation is a vector that can either be up and down, left, right, blah, blah, blah on a D-pad or a WASD. So this is how I'm controlling whether or not, like how I'm controlling the directions of the movement. Currently, we are connecting these objects, specifically the buttons, via navigation system and saying when you push down on the selected button, go to this button. When you push down, go to this button. When you go push up, go to this button. And then we're manipulating that a little bit behind the scenes when we're deciding which ones are enabled and which ones are disabled. But essentially, whichever button you currently have selected, I just push up and down and Unity figures it out. We have not really had to add input for something that isn't just moving up and down on predefined buttons. This will be one of those first few times, I think. So we need to figure out with the new input system, this guy, how do I call and check on navigation? So we need to go to the Googles again, and we need to look Unity input This is legacy, I think. Put manager, no. Can we find it in the package manager? Package manager. Get over here on the other screen. Get over here. Input system, view documentation. Okay, good. Looks like that got opened. And something that wasn't Chrome. Gross. Input system. Okay, guides. So this is that input system I was just showing. This is UI support quick start guide. Creating actions. We already have all these actions set up. Invoke. Fire. I don't want to have to do this from the... I don't want to have to do this from the main menu, from a mono behavior. I just want to bind a new input to an action. Is this it? Input action, binding, yada yada. So many different options. I'm just looking for a basic on left, which I think there was something close to that up here. Using a positive and negative button to drive an axis. No, that's not quite it. Yeah, I don't want to use the UI. I know I ran into a similar problem before where the system really wants us to use mono behaviors, but there are ways of doing this via scripting. Yeah, I don't want to have to like drag these in. You can manually create and configure actions. This also works at runtime in the player. Okay. Create a freestanding action. I don't think I want to create one. I think I just want to use one. Let's do a quick look to make sure I'm not wrong about having never done this before. Okay, this needs to be smaller. Let's find input action, entire solution, unnarrow the search. Is there anywhere we're doing this? That's not what I'm looking for. Cancel. We do it for cancel on the sub menu. Okay, okay. So UI navigation input on this guy. Create a new one. On enable perform. Okay. Okay, so I do this somewhere. So we can use this as reference maybe? So maybe the menu handles this? Maybe we just add to this, cancel. What are the other options? Navigation. When someone performs navigation, call a function. Now, this navigation is different from cancel. Cancel, we don't actually get anything about the input. Okay, so we're still at a problem space because we need to know which axis they pushed on the navigation, whether they pushed left or right. Move action, read value vector 2. Instead of using callbacks, it might be simpler instead to poll. Okay, this is for constantly reading it. So I want to... We do want the callback version. Xspyrez in YouTube, welcome to the stream. Thank you for making my childhood and the person who I am today. Thank you. You are welcome, sir. Thank you for stopping by, and I appreciate the comment. I really, really do. Means a lot. Okay, so we have the action callback. We are checking whether it's been performed. But once it's been performed, how do we tell whether it was a left or right call on navigation? How do I tell? Yeah, this is making one from scratch. When they perform, call on look. But what does on look do? Here, look equals context read value vector 2. Okay, so then here, when we call this, we don't want to call a function per se. We want to do something more like this. But instead of calling look, we want to call a function called like left right. And we want to pass in a vector to direction. And we want to call left right with this. Okay. And then when we get this, direction is going to be I'm going to guess, this is a wild guess, but if direction is less than 0, then that probably means we push to the left. And else, if direction is greater than 0, we probably push to the right. In the X direction specifically, because we care about the horizontal, but not about the vertical. Okay, so if a navigation is performed, call left right, checking the X direction of left right. I wonder if we're going to need to add some sort of delay so that if we hold left, it's not going to just spin forever. Because we want on down. Maybe we need a new form of navigation. If we look at UI nav, edit, these are button presses, these are actions. We can instead have a new action which is left, and left, instead of being a vector, is just a button press. Maybe this is a better way to do it. Gamepad. Left would be the button. Well, we probably want a bunch of things. We probably want left stick. Looks like we're primarily using D-pad right now. We'll go through and add left stick and stuff later, but for now, let's say D-pad left is left, and let's add another binding, and let's say that listen A is left. And then let's add a new binding for right. And let's say that right is D-pad right. And let's add a new binding and let's listen and say that D is also right. Okay. Let's save this asset. Close that. Now instead of doing on navigation, we can do left performed. And on left performed, we can instead just call left. Yeah, this seems better. And we don't even need to pass anything in. And on right performed, we can just call right, which we'll make a function for. Left, right, and then here's where things get slightly tricky. We now need to get the selected button. Which is whichever button we're currently being hovered over. So I think we get the current, and then current is specifically a event system, current selected object, and on current selected object we want to do a try get component. How do we do these again? We just want to write the out for it. We don't need to add anything else. This is something else I've been trying to pick up lately. So we want to try get out a component that is a ability button. And we want to do ability button, make a new class. All right. And then need an extra bracket. So this will try and get ability button. And then if it does, it'll get in here. Otherwise it won't. And then if it does get in here, we want to call left. And then we want to do the same thing for right. Probably could simplify this down into like one function call still, but this is fine. Okay. Cool. So now if we've done this correctly, and let's again try and just test code as we go. So we're going to go add some breakpoints. We're going to attach this to Unity. And then we're going to go into the menu. And ideally, if we hit left and right while the menu is up, we should get into these functions if we've set up this input stuff correctly, which I haven't spent a lot of time working with the input stuff. So we'll see. All right. So left, right. Don't care about that. Sorry. Okay. Left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. Okay, that's worst case. Worst case is nothing happens, because if nothing happens, well then I don't know what's happening. So on perform left, right, call left, right. This should be enabled. Oh, we only do this if it's a sub menu. Oh, I didn't see that code above it. We kind of want the opposite. We kind of only want to do this if it's not a submenu. Yeah, sorry. I was just thinking about what happens if we are in a submenu. Like if we're selecting a sub option, will we end up swapping back and forth on the previous menu? But I don't think so, because we're going to show what we're currently selecting, and we'll no longer technically be currently selecting anything on the previous menu. So when we're in submenus, we shouldn't have left rights happening. Okay, let's come back in here. Let's restart the game, run it again. Let's find out what happens if we hit left right now. Left. Well, okay, well I said left, but I actually hit right. My brain's dumb. All right, so we got in here, but we didn't get in here. Because technically we're selecting the button, and the button is a sub piece. This button is underneath of the script. So we actually need to try to get component in parent. It's a bit gross code, but it should work. So we should be able to do the exact same thing, but just check my parent, because we're expecting that the object one above from us transform. This is really bad code, but I think I'm fine with it because I understand the reason for its existence. Okay. Cool. Restart. Okay. There was an error. Because we haven't set up this ability info stuff. So the ability infos should be set in a couple spots. So we need to make some changes. So when we initialize these buttons, we need to do a bit more work. We need to do ability button dot menu is equal to this. So we set a reference to this menu inside of each button that we set up. We also need to set up the ability infos to be equal to this list of ability infos. Ability ID. I don't love this, but it should be fine. We should expect that there is at least one ability info. I mean, we could also just do that technically. That works too, I think. Yeah, that works. Okay, cool. So now this should all be set up, and we should be able to choose different characters to attack with. Hitting left, right should change who we are performing our action with. Now, there is no indication of that, but I should be now attacking with the golem, and I am. Now, I believe when we get back in here, this should be... It's not. It's still the first character. It remembers. But not purposely. This value just doesn't ever get updated again, so it just stays as 0. Okay, that's fine, whatever. Now, we need to add a little bit to these buttons. Is an ability button a prefab? It's called a command button. Open prefab. If we modify it here, it should update all 4 of them in the scene, ideally. So this is what an ability looks like. It's a command button. We want to have an image that is the portrait of the character. And we want to have some little arrows that go left and right. Let's add a new image. Probably doesn't need to be that big. In fact, can we just scale this thing to be... just playing with pivots and stuff. 0.5 is fine for this. 1 is fine for that. Okay, let's make it in by -15. So we would never have both of these things up. We wouldn't have the element to display or even the cost on the main menu. We would just have this thing, this portrait image. Let's leave them off while we design this. Okay, so we would have this image. We'll call it portrait. And then we would want to have this portrait equal to red square. A lot of the Unity assets. Hero 1. Okay, so it would be the portrait of the character, and then we'd want little arrows going left and right, which we don't really have. I mean, I probably can make that here in Krita real fast, just a little gray box thing. Let's make it 32 by 32. It's probably too big, but we can scale it in Unity if we have to. And then let's make a line that goes from here to there, and from there to there. Seems awful. Let's add like a shadow effect to it, I guess. Let's put this layer 1 below. Let's delete the background so there's transparency in behind. Remove layer, okay, and then yeah, it's pretty awful. All right, let's go with that. In fact, I feel like this could be thicker. Let's go back to black. Sure. Again, we're not making perfect things here. Let's go assets, JRPG assets. Let's just throw it in this art folder where I've basically been throwing all the junk. And then this can be an arrow selection. Sure. Cancel. That tried to export that as something weird. Let's specifically choose PNG. Arrow selection. Okay, let's remove all that compression off of this super piece of art. We don't want that being compressed. All right, and then arrow can be a new image, which could be arrow selection. Set the native size. Really? That's the native size? It's 32 by 32. Why is it saying 25 by 25? Odd. Odd. try 16 by 16. Let's just half it. Yeah, that looks better. Arrow right, duplicate, arrow left. We'll do -1 on the scale to flip it. Let's align it to the left-hand side of this object, pivot at 0, like so, and we'll move it by like 5's probably too much. -2? -4. 4. No, not 14, 4. And then same thing here. This can be probably 0 and then 4. Cool. And then the whole portrait thing can be shifted. What if it was just centered on the end? How bad would that look? Let's create an empty game object. We'll call this arrow group. Okay. Now we're going to add some extra things to this script. We're going to have a reference to the image. So image portrait. And we're also going to have another game object, which will be the arrow group. The arrow group will be inside of this update call here. We will set activity if the count of this is greater than 1. Yeah, if we have more than 1 ability info, then we can show the arrows. Because otherwise it's not going to do anything anyways. And then I also just realized before I forget, we do need to call this function as well. When we create the button, when we set it all up, we also need to update the group. Okay, now back to where we were. Okay, so we're updating this, but then we'll also need to update the portrait. So the portrait will need to be based off of the unit. So we need to go find where we use portraits. Sprite image, sprite results, character view. This looks like the code I'm looking for. Yeah, so portraits sprite will be equal to the result of this call. We need to add addressables to this thing, and then this character is actually going to be ability info dot unit. So find the unit of this ability, get their portrait, load it up here. That seems good. And I think that's all we have to do. We just need to hook up the references here. And that should be it. Arrow group. Portrait. I did just realize an instance. Another thing we need to do. We should only show this portrait object for main menu abilities. All right, let's just get the code written, and then I may come back and do another pass later, but let's just do it. So main menu button, which will be equal to false by default, I think. We'll only set it to true when need be. If this is a main menu button, we can do this logic. And we also want to do portrait.gameObject is set activity We only want it to be on if this is a main menu button. Okay, and then inside of main menu action, we want to add main menu button is equal to whether or not this is a submenu. Basically. Reverse that. If it's not a submenu, then it's a main menu. Otherwise, if it's if it's a submenu, then it's not a main menu. This logic is reversed. Okay, cool. Great, good, excellent. And I think that should all be working now. So we can remove this. We can turn this back on by default, although I don't think it really matters that much. And if we come in and look at these command buttons, they should have updated to have the portrait, and they did. So now if we run the game, these are all red hero actions. So we can perform an attack with him. That all seemed fine. Moment of truth here. And I do believe that that is working. It's not the most clean thing I've ever created, but that feels closer. I think sizing and a bunch of other things need to be figured out, but that seems a lot better. Even just here to be like, oh, these are skills for yellow, these are skills for, yeah. Yep. Okay, cool. Nothing else seems to be breaking in any weird way. I performed an attack with the golem earlier. Can I still do one with you? Yep. Now can I do one with the golem? Yep. Cool. Oh. Oh. Oh no. This needs to get reset back to 0. We'll need to add I was going to leave the setting it to a random value on its own, but it needs to be 0 because sometimes we're going to have situations where that ability icon doesn't have more than 1. We should also write an initialization function for this as well, instead of doing all this logic here. The ability info button should be able to handle all of this, should be able to just pass in a couple pieces. So we'll set that to the second index. And then if we go to the fire hero, yeah, he resets properly now. Okay, we just need to set it to 0 every time we set up the abilities. We always start at the first one. So even if I had the companion the turn before. Ooh, that's not great. When we hit escape and go back, we forget. Let's write that in init function. That'll fix this. I want the memory. I want it to remember your last position, potentially. No. No, I can't fix this right now. There's going to have to be a more comprehensive system to remember what your last input was. Shame. That's a shame. Okay. I still think I can write an init function for this, though. Maybe I can just do it really easily by doing this. Can I do quick refactor, quick refactor? Ah, there we go. Whoa. Sorry. Let me... One more time. Ability button. Quick refactor. Give it a second. Let it think about it. There's a lot to take in here. No? I gave it a second. Okay, there we go. Extract method. Init. Oh, caps lock is on. Init. Okay, so we've made a new function called init. Which calls this. Now, I'm going to take this init function. I'm going to pull it out of here. And I'm going to stick it in ability. Should work. Can't see why not. We'll make it public. Some things break. Okay, close enough. So now let's try and fix up the broken parts, the broken issues. So here, we use design data anywhere else? We do. We use it somewhere else. That's fine. We can pass that in. Main menu abilities. That gets used. To set the ability infos and to set the ability ID. Okay, fair. I don't think we need to pass in the list though. We could just pass in one. Like that. That seems cleaner. And this value will be I. Okay. Ability buttons. This is the list of ability buttons. Why do we have to pass that in? Because we add it to the list. That can probably get pulled out and just put here instead. And then we don't need this here anymore. Cool. I doesn't need to be used anymore, it doesn't look like, because we've changed some things around. And then ability info button, this no longer needs to be passed in because now we're inside of the ability info button, so we can just do this. And we are just setting these parameters. Which seems better. Okay, so now this thing is in charge of initializing itself. And then it can just call pressed. Okay, that seems better too. I think by the same token, we don't have to pass in all of the design datas. We can literally just pass in this, I think. Refactoring. Don't need this anymore. Don't need this. Don't need this. Okay. Cool. Now we don't need this here. Now we just need I guess main menu button. I guess this should really be is main menu button. I'm gonna rename it. Oh, rename. And that will get passed in here. And cleaning code. That can get passed in like that. And finally, this. So we want to pass in a reference to main menu action. Like so. Cool. So now the initialization of ability buttons is handled by ability buttons. So if we want to change this stuff here, we change it in this spot, and this menu is really just about handling itself. Cool. Trying to see if there's anything else I'm missing about this. I still like to change it so that the actual press didn't have to call back to the menu button. I feel like this could be passed as a function reference instead of as a callback. Regardless, moving on. Okay, so now let's see if that works. That should be better. Code's a little bit cleaner. This still feels a bit cluttered when we activate this menu. This is some of the older code we have, and it's just feeling a little bit, I don't know, not as clean. Oh, it doesn't like something. Oh, I missed removing ability button from a few spots. Should be it. Cool. That looks to work. Feels better. Feels better. We do need to add some sort of way of distinguishing skills that are not available. Like, we can't do this. And specifically, we can't do it because we don't have any purple elemental points. Still feel pretty happy about this. Pretty clean. All right. Well, now what? I think at the beginning of the stream, the other thing I mentioned that I wanted to do was have it so that they swapped back and forth. We've been streaming for 2 hours and 15 minutes. I think I got another couple hours in me today, at least another hour, I think. But I think I'm going to pause for a bit. I'm going to take a bit of time to think about next steps, because I think I would like to maybe try and hook it up so that as you select different abilities, depending on who the controller of that ability is, whether that's hitting left and right or going up and down through the skills, I think that it should swap left and right between the characters to show who's going to be performing that attack. And I even think some sort of like highlight behind these, because I was just looking at like, hey, I can use this skill because I have 5 SP, but can I use this skill which requires 10? Like, it's not immediately clear which one of these it is. Now, if we move the sub command menu to be positioned like this, we could show whoever's in front, but I still think some sort of like selector here could also help like draw your eye to which of these stats you're needing to pay attention to. Maybe even darken one and highlight the other. I don't know. But I want to take some time and think about that. Maybe like I stop, get a snack, take a drink, hydrate, and be back maybe in 15 minutes with some more just fooling around with code. I don't think there's a lot of you guys around today. I mean, this was a pretty design centric and very not technical, but I did one thing. But I tried to do one thing as good as I could so that we can play with this and see how we like it and then iterate again probably in a month or two on it. Because I don't think it's there perfectly, but it's definitely a step in the right direction, I think. But I'll be back in 15. For now, this is Tolhi signing out.